Welcome to Yes Also. I'm Susie Barrett, and my guest today is the unconditional genius, Anne Campbell. Heather started improvising at Improv Olympic in Chicago when she was in high school and has since gone on to live a literal wish list of comedy dreams. She did Boom Chicago, she was a cast member on Whose Line Is It Anyway, a member of the legendary UCB sketch show The Midnight Show, a writer for SNL and Rick and Morty, and was one half of the two winningest cage match teams in UCB LA's history, Heather and Miles and Becky Dryspell. If you've seen Heather play, you know she's one of the most special and unique improvisers out there, and this is truly one of my favorite episodes of this podcast to date. I apologize for my half of the audio on this interview. My microphone broke, and this is what I got. Anyway, when you're done listening, remember to head over to Instagram at YesAlsoPod to check out some pictures of Heather and follow us there. And with that, here we go. Heather Campbell, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start with the beginning of my knowledge of your improv journey. I remember you telling me one time that you started improvising when you were 15.
It was either 15 or 14, somewhere in there. I had a high school. Is this how you start? You just like launch in? There's no like chit chat?
We can chit chat. I don't, when I tune into podcasts, I like them to get to the point.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to know what they had for breakfast.
Okay.
But we can do that if you want. You want to chit chat?
No. I was just like, oh shit, it's business. So yeah, when I was in high school, I grew up in Chicago, and we didn't have a theater department, but we had like an after school program. And my parents always worked late, so I was in every after school program that they offered. And they had like this theater guy, this director, his name was Ian Gerber. And he came into the school and did theater for us for free. Like they weren't paying this guy. And he taught us improv exercises, and I loved them very much. And he was like, do you guys want to go to an improv show? And we all went on this like late night field trip with a guy who's not being paid by the school to Improv Olympic, and saw Monster Island, which was Miles Stroth's team at the time. And I was like, oh my God, you can do this for a living? And
right. People are here and they paid?
Yeah.
Like, you can be that guy?
As a kid, you're like, what? Wait. I thought the world was just like, you had your choices between like working in construction or being a secretary, and that's it. Like, there's nothing else.
Right.
So I asked, I asked whoever was there at like the box office or something, is there ever a time that anybody can come up and do this? And they were like, oh yeah, there's a jam. And I started doing the improv jam. Like my parents would drop me off. This is a different time. Drop me off at midnight in the city as a high school kid. I was like a freshman in high school. And then I would do improv. And at some point, Sharna came to the show because I'm sure she heard there was a child showing up every Friday. And was like, you should take classes. It would be really interesting to see what happens if a child took these classes. And so, yeah, I got involved really. And now I don't think that's remarkable in any way now. Like there's so many high school programs, and there's like UCB and like theaters have outreach for like young people to do improv. But at the time it was me. I would show up to these classes and it would be me and 30 and 40-year-olds is what they seemed like at the time. They probably were like 21. And that's how it began.
And when you were doing these jams, you hadn't had classes yet. Looking back on those, do you have a perception of like what kind of improv you were doing? Were you just kind of like making silly choices or following what like other people's lead was, or what was that improv like?
I think my pet theory is that improv is natural to us. That when we are children and we are playing imagination games with one another, that's improv. And it is only through the structures that like social interaction puts on us, where we introduce shame to imagination, or
Yeah.
when when we're taught that like things have rules, or that you can't say certain things because they're stupid, that you begin to shackle our natural instincts. And improv classes are a way of breaking those bonds. And I think because I started so young, there was a real easy transition between the imagination games of my youth and improv, because I hadn't been told to be cool yet, you
Yeah,
know?
you were in that uncanny valley, like right on the line
Yeah.
before things become all about clothes and dating. And
Yeah.
thankfully, improv rescued you from that world
Yeah.
um, just in time. Um, uh, what had you wanted to be personally before improv entered your life?
Yeah, I'd always wanted to be a writer.
Hmm.
I wanted to be a writer or an archaeologist. And uh, when I went to college, I tried to do both. Like I took like a double major for a short amount of time before I was like, this is fucking impossible. Um, and the truth is, it wasn't until Boom Chicago that I had ever considered being a comedian in any like career path. Like I was
Uh,
just like doing improv on the weekends because it was fun. And then, or, weekday nights, whatever 8 p.m. IO slot on Santa Monica they offered.
right.
Um, and then do it and spending the rest of my time writing. Like I moved to LA to write scripts. And when I was a kid, I would write little novels, like a child's novel.
Uh huh. Do you have
Yeah.
any of those still?
My mom does. But they're like boxed up somewhere
Hidden
in like,
from you.
yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, if you ever find any and want to share, I would love to read what your brain was up to at 8 years old.
Yeah.
um, and we sort of skipped past this, but you did Meow Show at Northwestern, right? Northwestern
Yes.
was college, yeah. And what did that do for your comedy?
Well, again, because I'd started so early on like new student week, the Meow Show did like a show for like the new students. And I went up to the director and I was like, this is great. I want to do this. How do I do this? And she was like, there's auditions. You can't just like do it. And I was like, because I thought it was just like IO, that you just like chose to do it. And these were the 8 people who had chose to do it that week. Um, but I'd had years of experience by the time I was a freshman in college. So the audition process was natural, and not like I also didn't have any idea that it was a big show. Like I saw them do like a new student week show and I thought it was just like the improv group. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, you
Um
thought it was like, yeah, volunteers at orientation or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I wasn't nervous for the audition, like, it was just like, "Oh, yeah, I know this game. Oh, yeah, this is it's new choice. We do this at the Jam. I've been doing this since I was 14." Like, it was just
Yeah.
nothing. And all of this, this is all an avalanche from this one random guy. I think he's from Colorado. Like, this one random director who was like, "Take the high school kids to Improv Olympic."
What?
That and the strange indulgence of my parents dropping me off at midnight for the Jam, like,
Right. I love
without a cell phone.
I love right. I love that they were dropping you off. Like they're like, we have some stuff to do. It's midnight. We'll be back at 1 a.m., but we have to get back to the suburbs for nap. And then we'll come back. We're gonna take an 18-minute nap and then drive back. Uh is that guy still around? The
Yeah,
Colorado adult?
yeah. We have been in intermittent touch over the years via like Facebook Messenger. Like he reached
Mhm.
out at some point and was like, "Holy shit, I saw your name on television. I can't believe this." Like he I don't obviously this so my high school shut down because it was a real flaming pile of garbage, and he moved somewhere else. Like he's no longer in Chicago.
He took
But
his magical suitcases, stacked them up onto his
really,
medicine wagon, and pulled him to a new town.
really, really, like, this is a
Yeah.
guy who, yeah, I mean, like, he occupies that sort of oracle position. He
Yeah.
still has, like, he was like, we did, like, a video chat or something, I don't remember, like, a f mo probably 5, 10 years ago, and he still had, like, the programs, and I was like, "Who was this guy?" Like, what a weird, he might as well have been wearing, like, a top hat and, like, a Willy Wonka
Yeah.
suit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I picture him like somewhere in the intersection of like the Music Man and Captain OJ Reedmore.
It's also crazy because, like, there's a lot of moments in your life where you can kind of see divergent paths. Like,
Mhm.
if that guy had just chosen a different high school, or like, if there had been, he was literally a guy who forked the multiverse for me, and I ended
Uh,
up here. And if he hadn't brought us to IO, if he hadn't, been like, "Oh, I guess I don't need a paycheck. I could teach these kids theater. It's important." Like, if he hadn't done any of that shit, I wouldn't be talking to you.
Totally. I have the same thing with my high school theater director. And he just retired, and I got to go back and tell him this. Just because he took an interest in me taking an interest in improv, that's why I'm
Yeah,
here. It's wild.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
I'm glad that that guy, what's his name again?
His name is Ian Gerber.
Ian Gerber, big shout out. I'm glad that he gets to know that he was the formative path forker
Yeah,
in your life.
yeah.
That sounds dirty, but I didn't mean to path forker. Well, so I want to ask you this: like, you touched on something I think about a lot, which is like the ability of youth to like skip you past any fear that you might have, or any like embarrassment or shyness, because it's like the ignorance of youth that
Yeah,
shields you from even knowing that you should be afraid of something.
yeah.
Do you think that if you had done things like the Meow audition, or the like classes at IO at a later date, that you would have been more scared, more reluctant? I guess that's such a weird question because it's so hypothetical.
Yeah, I mean, I can assume that I would have been more reluctant or more afraid. Certainly, I think everybody's high school experience is traumatic in a different way. Like, I don't think
Mhm.
anybody, even the like most popular people, quote popular people at high school, I think that they are experiencing horrors that, other people, like, all of, like, it is a nightmare place, and only more
Yeah,
so now that they're doing, like, shooter drills. Like, I think that to exit high school intact is really difficult. So I do have a lot of empathy for people who begin that journey later, because I think that there are a lot more barricades that you have to overcome, just in terms of, like, your own person, awareness of your body, like questioning whether or not your instincts are going to humiliate you.
mm.
It's, it's terrible.
Sorry.
We gotta figure out a different way.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the different way does not include a complete injection of social media into every
Oh
aspect
my
of a
god.
teenager's
Oh my
life.
god. Like,
Yeah,
why do we take people at their meanest and least formed, like the moment before they become like true empaths, and we crush them all together to hurt each other in, like,
right,
an assembly line based on factories from the turn of the like, every part of it is fucked up.
right.
Um,
And
and
then
now,
place their humiliations on a stage for the entire globe to look at and comment on. I mean, my God.
wow.
Yeah. I was curious about the fearless aspect because I see you as such a fearless performer, and a fearless person. You are so undaunted. You make giant choices. You play at the speed of your brain and your instincts. And in life, you're this voracious creator. So I was just wondering, like, if some of that ingredient in you was sprinkled in during those like early successes where you were elevated quickly.
I think I have a lot of parenting privilege. I think that
Mm,
my parents were extremely supportive, and I think that that is probably more of a core than the age at which I started. Yeah, I think that having parents who would be like, "Yeah, you want to investigate this? We'll support this. We'll uplift this." Is more important and more critical to the way that I ended up living than any other aspect of like when I started. Like, if I'd started at 14 and I'd told my parents and they'd been like, "That's stupid. What are you doing?" Like if they'd been, like if at any junction, if juncture, if intersection, if at any intersection they had been like, "Don't do this, you should be ashamed," then I think that would have been something, but I've incredible privilege with the way that my parents raised me, the way they were involved in my life. Um, I I can't like that's it. I think that's it.
yeah, that's also really amazing. Um, and your parents are wonderful people, even from the outside, even from someone who didn't benefit from their privileged parenting. Um, so you talked about Boom Chicago. Let's go there. What inspired you to audition for
Right now?
Boom? Uh,
Should we
yeah, let's
you
go.
want me to
Yeah.
get the fuck out of here?
Yeah, we're gonna do a quick idols. You can choose your person on the way. Um, yeah, like given that you wanted to be in LA, being a writer, and you weren't expecting to do improv as a
Mm.
career, what inspired you to audition, and what was that like?
So I uh I wrote 2 screenplays when I came out here. Well, one before I came out here and one, as I was here. And, they got optioned, and I
That's
had never
insane, Heather. That is insane. Let's not just throw that off as an aside. My God, do they hold up? Have you read them recently?
No, they're terrible. They do not hold up.
But
One of them is alright. But it is so dated now that it can't like, there's nothing I can do with it now.
it's called Women Should Cook.
It's
Uh,
called, Working at the World Trade. The the, so yeah, so I'd had this experience where I'd never, because in college, you don't get you get like feedback from a teacher, but you'd never been in part of like an executive notes project process. And I
mhm,
didn't have reps. Like I didn't have a manager, I didn't have an agent or anything. So it was just me directly with people taking advantage of me. The
mm,
scripts were optioned for like not an amount of money that would have paid for a week's worth of groceries and rent. Like it was so like looking back on it, it was evil.
mm.
Because these guys, they brought me into their offices, and were like, "You wrote this?" Because like the first one I wrote when I was 20, and they literally were like, "You wrote this for real? Like how would you feel about it being picked up and we would share the rights with you?" Like they just were like devils.
Yeah.
Um and the notes that they gave me were awful. Like like crushing, disillusioning notes. And
Do
I
you
was
remember any of them?
Yes, I do. So I'd written a movie with a friend named Josh, and Josh and I wrote this movie that was about kids in high school obsessed with action movies who get
Mhm.
sucked into an action movie. So
Great.
not like sucked in like through the TV, but they're at a bank when a bank robbery happens, and they discover that they can use the tools from action movies that they've loved their whole life to help win this thing.
I love
Um,
this.
and the leading note was, again, this dates the script. We want this movie to take place inside a matrix. So can you adapt this so that all these kids are inside of a video game when this happens?
Ugh.
And we were like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like that
And
is
can you retitle it Matrix 2, starring Keanu Reeves?
it was and it kind of broke my spirit.
Ugh.
And I had a friend at an improv group, or at an improv place called Ultimate Improv, who was auditioning for Boom. And I had auditioned when I was in college and didn't get called back and never really kind of thought about it again. And he was like, "Hey, would you mind coming with me to audition? Because I'm nervous about going with nobody I know." And I was like, "Yeah, dude." And he was flying to Chicago to do it. And I was like, I was thinking about going to see my parents anyway. They've been bothering me to come see them. So yeah, I'll go audition in Chicago.
My
And flew out.
unconditionally supportive parents have been bothering me, like nagging me.
uh,
Uh,
yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's a long answer for the short answer of a friend was auditioning and
yeah,
wanted me to come out. Yeah.
yeah. Is this a friend I know? This is not someone who ever
No,
got them.
no,
No.
it's not, and it's also we fell out of touch almost immediately after I went to Boom.
God. Well, hopefully he's doing some great
Yeah.
archaeology out there. Um, it's a 1-to-1 swap.
Yeah, yeah.
So you and I got Boom at the same time. We flew over on the same flight
Yeah.
with Jim Woods. What did Boom do for you, or didn't it? Did you? Yeah, talk to me. Like, what's your takeaway from your time at Boom? Any good, any bad?
Um, I think it tempered my arrogance.
Mm,
Um, I went to Boom thinking, and I think to some degree, when we would watch the show when we first got there, we were like, "What is this? We can do better than this. We're so much better than this. We can write the best show ever." Like we came in with arrogance and also like international naivete. Like we didn't
yeah,
understand what we were seeing and how it was working and what it was serving to the audience.
right.
And I think that Boom took that arrogance and reshaped it into confidence, and then taught me specifically how to make something that appealed to the people I was actually in front of, instead of believing that I knew better than an entire a company that honestly shouldn't exist. Like the fact that Boom exists is proof that they know what they're doing.
Right.
And that was the lesson that I had, that I, when I crossed that sort of adventure threshold and like was like, "Oh, I have to tell these jokes this certain way because that's what makes people laugh. And if they've paid to come into this building to laugh, that's what I owe them." And to build a bridge between what I believed was funny and what the audience thought was funny, I think that was the gift that the theater gave.
Yeah. I have memories. You already had done so much sketch writing and so much improv at that point. And I remember being in awe of not only your work ethic, but also like your prolific output. Like, I'd come in with kind of an idea about like maybe we should do something that involves this. And you'd come in with like 4 sketches that you'd written the night before, or like 2 that you had written in LA and one from Northwestern and a new one. But I remember putting some of your sketches up in front of a Boom audience, like Were Chair, which is a sketch. It's a werewolf sketch.
Yeah, it's like a human who
Hilarious.
turns into a chair, who turns
Oh,
like,
that's right.
and yeah, and thinks that like, and treats their transformation as if it was the most horrific thing for everybody else. Like, "I'm so sorry," like,
Right.
"Did I hurt you?" Like all,
Right.
like,
And there'd be like
you know
a lightning crack,
yeah.
and the lights would flash up, and the person would disappear, and then in their place was a chair.
Yeah, I can't remember. Did you play the wear chair? I feel like you played the wear chair.
Could be.
I don't
I
remember.
Yeah, I have such Swiss cheese brain at this point, especially from that time. But I remember being like, oh, this is to me objectively funny, but I guess there's no such thing as objectively funny because it got crickets for a room
Yeah,
full of 300 people. And we tried it
yeah,
like 4 nights in a row because you were like,
yeah.
Pep, I know this is funny. I'll change the wording so that it plays better. But that
Really,
was a yeah,
they hated it. I mean,
they
like, it
hated
wasn't
it.
just crickets, it was, like, angry crickets, like, they were
Yeah,
upset that they were being put through it.
yeah.
Um,
You could feel the protest in their silence. There's
that that sketch eventually made it to television,
oh,
because
great.
I brought it to a kids show that I wrote, like, 15 years ago or whatever, and it was on Cartoon Network, on, like,
Amazing.
a lost sketch show. So I kept trying. I never gave up on Wear Chair.
It finally saw the light of the midnight moon. Um, so, when you left Boom, what was the decision to leave? Why then? And what were you heading back to?
Why did you leave?
I felt done with it. I started feeling like, well, there was like a shape to it. Like the whole first year, I felt like I was getting used to the job. And by the
Yeah,
end of the first year, I had the job, and I was also starting to make friends kind of outside the cast, like closer friends with wait staff, with promoters, a couple people in town that I had met. And I remember Brendan being like, year two is the best. Like, don't go back now. Just enjoy knowing the job and learning the city better. So I did that. And year two was amazing. And then heading into year three, I remember thinking, like, how long will this feeling last? And a few months in, I was like, yeah, it's not building. And looking at my crystal ball, I was like, if I stay here, I will do one thing. I can do one thing, which is boom.
yeah,
I can't be on
yeah,
TV. I can't do movies. I can't write for a show. If I go back, I can do any one of a million things, and I don't know what's
yeah.
going to happen. And also, there's a million different live shows I can do and classes I can take. And yeah, and then once I started clocking that and the experience of like the city and my social life wasn't getting any better, it was staying the same. It felt like there was kind of no reason for me to stay. Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think I think my experience is almost identical. We left in a very similar window. And it just was like, wow, on the story circle of life, you've gone in thinking you're better than a thing, like crossed a threshold into learning that thing, had a great time like building that skill, and then you find yourself suddenly without any more enemies to conquer. Like you've got like the magic sword, there's nothing else to do, and so you have to head off to another adventure. And I think that was kind of like, it's like you hit a ceiling, you beat that dungeon, you beat that boss, and
uh-huh,
now you've got to go play a different game. And also there was still, for me, there was still that pull of like, I don't know if I want to be a comedian. I know that I want to write, and I'm writing here. And Jim and I wrote a show that we came back to America with. Like I was still writing, but I was hungry to write more than Boom offered, because we were only writing one show a year.
right.
Um, and so it felt like there was something in me that wasn't being serviced, and I had to go someplace where that was, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is something to be said for like writing from your own personal well and your own experience and your own observations rather than only threading that very specific needle
Yeah.
where you have to go, okay, we need something politically topical. We
Yep.
need
Yep.
something that's relevant to the differences between Dutch and American culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
you've since had a very successful writing career. Talk to me about like kind of the order of jobs. You wrote for SNL, but I don't know where that fell in your like. What's your writing timeline?
Yeah, I mean, there's the dark ages of coming back to America thinking, "Now I know how to do this. I can do anything," and having to, like, deliver groceries, and you're like, "Oh my god. Oh no. Nothing. What have I done?" Um, so, yeah, I mean, I did the Groundling Sunday Company was, like, my first, like, after Boom writing, like I wrote sketch shows for at IO and UCB, but like that was like the first time that was like, oh, now you're writing sketches every week. You're trying to like make this show work.
I think I didn't know that you did Sunday Company, or I somehow forgot that.
So before I went to Boom, I did everything up to Sunday Company at the Groundlings, and then there's like a wait of years between the final writing lab or whatever and the Sunday Company like audition process. And
Mm.
I told the Groundlings, I think I'm going to go to Amsterdam while I wait for this. And they were like, "Are you out of your fucking mind? Like, do not do this. It will ruin your career." And went anyway, came back and was not yet up for
It's like almost 3 years. That's
yeah.
so funny. Uh,
um, but I got, to their knowledge, there hadn't been like a life-changing event. I had just been waiting. Like they didn't
right.
know that I left town and came back. So I did that and did the Sunday Company.
Did you
And
like Sunday Company?
fuck no, absolutely not. Like it used to be politically expedient to say, "Oh, every theater has its that place is fucking horrible." And the way they treat people and the way they treat talent, the way they treat women is awful. And some of the things that I was told at that theater, I look back on and I'm like, these are cancelable offenses. Like this is
Mm.
awful shit to be telling people.
Can
And
you
and
run
the
me through any of those things?
well, they said one that I could never play a man on stage in an improv scene or otherwise because the audience will not believe it and you will lose them and you can't do it. And I was like, well, can I what's our range here? Can I play an animal? Can I play somebody older than myself? Like if I play an 80-year-old woman, do I lose the audience?
Can I play an accountant even though I'm
Right.
very clearly not an accountant in my life?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that was not extended at the time to men. Men could play women
Wow.
uh because it's funny. Monty
Woof.
Python has shown us that it's funny. So that sucked. There was a time where I got the note that I needed to be less confident in improv scenes because it made the audience think that it wasn't improvised, that I had to fumble for my words, that I had to seem like I didn't know what I was doing because otherwise the audience would think it was scripted, or they like there's a litany of things that I was told at that theater that were that I hid for years because I was like, I don't want to offend the Groundlings, they're the mafia. And
Right.
now I'm like, fuck that place, man. They told me awful shit.
Yeah.
Like you should never tell a young woman to be less confident on stage.
My God.
Um I was also, after Boom, I was the first person and the only person cut from the Sunday Company. And
Wow.
one of the things that I was told was that my confidence was coming off as being cocky. And I was like, that is not what's happening. I'm given the suggestion and I'm entering the scene with intention. And I should not be punished for that. But it was off-putting to whoever the voting board is on. I don't even know how that fucking theater works.
Yeah,
Um,
I know very little about it except that their shows are 10 times too long and it's awful. It's an awful user experience to be sitting in a show that's already at 2.5 hours and endure like a full 2.5 minute scene change while the
yeah.
actors change every element of their wardrobe and a drum
Yeah,
solo just drags
forever,
on.
goes forever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
after Sunday Company, I did so we're on the journey to SNL. Sorry, this is taking a moment.
No, that's
Um,
okay.
there was a UCB audition for SNL where Lauren Michaels came to the theater and everybody did like a little showcase piece, and I sang "Be Skeptical,"
Oh, great.
which was a Boom Chicago thing that you and I used to perform together
That you wrote.
when we got
Yeah.
back to LA. Um, and everyone was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm not auditioning to be on the show. I'm auditioning to be a writer. And this is the best thing I've written. So I want them to see this and be like, she's not playing a character, but that's a really funny sketch." and
Right.
maybe that would like shuttle me into a writing position there. It did not. And one of the guys who was involved in that showcase was like, this should be SNL. This should be the show. And he scooped up a bunch of us and made it into the Midnight Show, which was a sketch show at UCB. And I
Okay.
did that for, I think it was 4 or 5 years. And I got a manager from that show. Like a manager came to the Midnight Show and was like, "Hey, I want to represent you. What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to write for SNL." And he was like, "Great, let's start submitting packets."
Let's pause here because I want to talk
Yeah.
about the midnight show.
Okay.
What did the midnight show do for you? Did it help unlock your personal voice in any way, or do you
Yes.
feel like you
Yes.
already had an identity? Yeah.
So I think that there are like 3 major steps of forming my comedic identity. One is this high school experience, one is Boom, and one is the Midnight Show.
Yeah.
And the Midnight Show was a monthly sketch group at UCB, where we like the I think the constitution, like if you could write the constitution of that show, it would be remember that you are performing a live visual experience. Like that sketch is not just 2 people talking, no matter how funny that is. You are not doing a Brecht play. You're not like you're supposed to be doing something visual. You're supposed to be transforming like the things that you love from television and film, and bringing that vocabulary to a stage show. um and so we were like pushing each other to like make stuff more interactive, stuff that couldn't be done in any other medium but was still like visually compelling.
Yeah.
And we wrote, I mean, at the height of that show, everybody in that show was writing 4 sketches every Wednesday and 4 sketches every Sunday. Like every week, everybody was bringing in such a giant library of material. And then all of that was voted on and like stripped down to like an hour, hour and a half show.
How is that sustainable in terms of like tapping your own well of ideas to do 8 sketches a week, or to write 8 sketches a week?
So I think for each person, it was different, like where they were, what well they were pulling from. What I discovered was, because I felt like the show was trying to be in dialogue with what we saw happening to the world, whether that be on television, on the internet, in politics, whatever it was. Like it felt like something was happening,
Hmm.
like the world was getting worse. And
Uh-huh.
so we wanted to be, engaging with that. I mean, it was never said that lofty. Like the way we would say it internally was the world was broken and so are we. And so I would watch, like on Wednesdays when it was, sketch writing, or Tuesdays really, when it was sketch writing time, I would watch television that like I would flip to channels that I would never watch and
Yeah.
watch their commercials, their content, like, like being dropped off in a foreign country and writing your observations. And that was that sort of Fraggle Rock experience of like, what is this? What
So
is happening? and
you
the
are the
and the
uncle traveling Matt of your own
yeah, yeah,
society.
yeah.
So funny.
uh, that uh, that that would be extremely unfamiliar and also very inspiring, because you would see commercials and you'd be like, "What is this?" The way that they're talking to the audience is even strange.
Yeah.
Um, so that would be the way that I would approach sketch writing. Is I would sit down, watch television with a journal, watch like 10 minutes of something that I don't even like, reality TV or, CSI, like all the stuff that I would never by choice consume. And write down sketch pitches in my journal, and then like go on YouTube, and it's like early fucking YouTube, or like what were the College Humor,
Yeah.
before that, dig.com, like all that early social media stuff. Um, and that would be the sort of gasoline that I kept pouring in.
Yeah.
Um, And it also made it so that like writing in general was just easy, because if I knew that I could write 8 to 10 sketches every week for years, then nothing else felt challenging. Very
Mhm.
similarly to, if you're improvising as a child and you have to audition for something, you're like, yeah, well, I've been doing this for years. Who cares? So by the time I had a manager and he was like, let's make a packet for you, it was all midnight show sketches that I submitted.
Yeah.
Like, just like, here you go. And the first year I tried to give a packet, because I submitted twice. The first year I tried to give them a packet that I thought they would like. And then after a year more of doing the midnight show, I was like, I don't even know that I want this job. So I'm going to submit what I think is funny. And if they
Mm.
like it, great. So I submitted a packet of stuff that would have been nearly unproducible on SNL. And that was the year that I got the job. Um, and they kept encouraging me to, like, once I was there, you only write 1 to 2 sketches a week? And I was like, "Wait, what do we do for the rest?"
You're
Like,
like,
what?
I'm done. It's 8 a.m. Can I go
Yeah,
home?
yeah, like, literally, I'd be like, "Okay, oh, I have this idea, like, I'm gonna do this thing." And I write the thing, and I'd show it to somebody, and then they'd be like, "Oh, wow, when did you write this?" And I was like, "Oh, last hour. What do we do now?" And they're like, "Just hang out until 5 in the morning." And I was like, "This is awful."
Do cocaine.
Yeah, except
Yeah.
except when I was there, everybody was like, like Bill Hader had a family. Nobody was doing drugs to my knowledge. It was
Right.
just like we were performing the rituals of late nights from the 70s without any of the vices. So
So
it just
weird.
felt vestigial. It was so strange.
Were there certain cast members that you loved writing for more than others, or that particularly inspired sketches in you?
I really liked writing for Sudeikis. I felt like my favorite kind of sketch is when somebody performs absurd material extremely seriously, and he was really
Mhm.
good at bringing a concept out and saying it with absolute like seriousness. Like,
Yeah.
this is a time machine. We're going to turn it on. George Washington is going to step out and he's going to tell us what he thinks, is something that, like, he was sort of the, I want to say, like, the Dan Aykroyd, the Phil Hartman of my
Phil
time there,
Hartman.
like that,
Right.
like that very, almost stoic. And that's not to say
Yeah.
that the dude can be silly, but for my purposes, that was the thing that I needed in a sketch.
Yeah, you need
But
him to be like the straight man,
yeah,
like the straight performance, so that the absurd idea shows
yeah,
up against that
yeah,
background. Yeah.
yeah. So I really liked writing for him. I really liked writing for Andy Samberg. He came from the Lonely Island guys, got the internet really early. Like, they understood what was about to change in comedy.
Hmm.
And so writing for them was really easy. But ultimately, like, I would say more than anything, I liked writing with Simon Rich, who I met at SNL, and we have remained very good friends since. And also, we've written together since. Like, we've written
Mm.
scripts together. And that was more of a camaraderie and an inspiration than any particular cast member. It was finding a like-minded person and be like, "Oh, wow. Yes, why don't we write like we we had so many sketches that were turned down. Like, we had a Jeopardy sketch because Watson had just done Jeopardy,
Uh-huh.
like the computer, and we had written that week, we wrote a sketch where, like, Watson's answers become increasingly threatening. Like, he's answering the questions correctly, but also, like, you know, pontificating about human beings' purpose, like,
Uh-huh.
um, and we thought it was so great, and we turned it in, and everyone's like, "What the fuck is this, man?" Or,
It was like
we
too
had
prescient. It's like, because
yeah,
that's like what we're dealing with now with chatbots becoming sentient, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that was the thing, I think, more than anything that was exciting at SNL was meeting Simon and writing with him.
When you came back from SNL, you were a cast member of the new Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, so
No.
Yeah, sort of. The two things happen. Like the month that I got SNL was also the month that I auditioned for a show called Drew Carey's Improvaganza, which was a Whose Line cast but on a different network show.
Mm.
And so I was doing SNL and then flying to Vegas to do tapings of that show, which was just Whose Line, but on Game Show Network. Um,
Gotcha.
and also, the set was the MGM Arena or whatever the fuck it was called, the MGM Theater. And God, that was a fucking great gig because we would split the house because it was a
Oh,
theater
wow.
show. And then we would also get paid for the TV part.
Wow.
So talk about like what a great way, like Drew's concept for like, I know how we can make money. Is great.
Yeah,
And
it sure beats delivering groceries.
holy shit. Um, so that show ended shortly after SNL, but I knew all those guys and had worked with them. So when the Who's Line auditions came up and they made everybody re-audition, like they made Jeff Davis re-audition for Who's Line, I had like a kind of a working relationship with him previous. So yeah, it was really lucky. But yeah, after SNL, years go by, and then I get on Who's Line.
Did you feel pressure being on Whose Line, or did it feel like another example of I've been doing this for years, I know what to do?
Who's Line? So there's like we've seen, you've seen the stage at SNL your whole life, and then to be like working in that room feels like dissociative in some way. Like you're like, this is in some way I feel like I'm not quite here. And Whose
Mhm.
Line was similar. It felt like I had been Forrest Gumped, like the footage of me had been like overlaid on the stage that I had watched when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Um, and so it didn't feel, the only pressure I felt was they didn't have a lot of women in that cast. And so I felt a lot of gendered pressure to be girly. They would like the director would come up to me ahead of time and be like, "Hey, we think it would be really cool if in this taping you could like kind of be flirty with the guys or like kiss Wayne or like like see if you can like pump up that energy a little bit." And I'd be like, "Sure." And I had grown my hair really long and curly and like was trying to be um like a CW American girl,
Yeah.
because I also felt that pressure behind the camera. So the show itself, the comedy was easy. Like those games are games that we played at Boom. Like it's nothing new. But I did feel like a pressure to be a certain kind of woman on screen.
Yeah, and it's really disturbing that they're asking you to do that between scenes as well. Not just can you play all the girlfriends and the
Yeah,
housewives and whatever these stereotypes that we need you to play, but also can you flirt with and kiss the other
yeah.
cast members on the cheek? Like that sucks, you know? That really sucks. It's also like, knowing you and knowing your like much more non-binary leaning presentation, it's like a bit of code switching to be like, can you be giggly and touch a knee and like toss your hair around and
It felt a little bit like as soon as the cameras were rolling, I was improvising the entire time because I was
yeah,
playing a character
yeah.
of my and then bringing that character into scenes and playing additional characters on top of it. Like, what would this bubbly version of the character of Heather do in a scene with Wayne Brady? Like, it wasn't like,
Wild.
yeah, it felt like from the moment it was rolling, there was like the MC version of me was fake, and then the characters that that person were playing were choices that that character would make.
That is wild. The layering of that and that audience members at home didn't know that you were double improvising.
I mean, I feel like now, if anybody has heard anything I've made since, they're like, I get a lot of like, DMs or whatever, and they're like, it's crazy that you were the same person from Whose Line and you're doing this, because my instincts are so dark. And on
Yeah.
Whose Line, it's like a fucking idiot. Like, oh my God, I'm on a date and what are we doing? Let me get you some snacks and a drink. Like that
Yeah.
improv is so different.
It feels so 1950s compared
Yeah.
to your actual sensibility. You do a lot of very successful two-prov. You and Miles had the winningest cage match run ever, right? And then
Mhm.
you and Beck Drysdale, like, weren't wasn't there a time where like those were the two shows, so Becky Drysdale and Heather and Miles had won the most cage matches and then had to play each other, and you were in
Yeah.
both shows.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a record, like Miles and I had set this cage match improv record. And for the listeners at home, the cage match is a competitive improv show where the audience votes who comes back every week. And so we'd had this like fantastic run, and then that run ended. And then years later, Beck and I started doing two prov. I like two prov. I don't think I've ever said that out loud. That's nice. And yeah, we got up to the Heather and Miles record. And so the show was, because when you break the record, you play against the team that had the record previously. So I think Heather and Miles played against Convoy. And then Becky Drysdale played against Heather and Miles. So I did both sides of the show. And honestly tried to win on both sides, because I was like,
Yeah.
either like I want to, and playing with Beck and playing with Miles are very, very different beasts.
Yeah,
So
just
it was,
describe that.
yeah.
What is the difference between playing with one or the other?
Uh, Beck is very clever,
Mhm.
and she can. So if you present information to her, whether it's like a character choice, information like a concept, a premise, a line that inspired by the opening suggestion, she can pull a thread of that and tie it into something else.
Yes.
And then you are reacting to something you didn't even know you were bringing, like information that you were bringing into the scene.
Right.
And that is, I think the play with Beck is a seesaw, where you think you're on one ride, and then it goes down, and then it goes up again, and then it goes down, and the whole time you're like, wait, what ride am I on? I thought I was just going up, or I thought I was just going down.
Yeah.
So it's a very heady play that feels more like almost like a game of paintball, where you're dodging and firing at the same time. You're like trying to like negotiate space and character. Whereas with Miles, you present something to him and he can somehow psychologically find the position of the person you are speaking to and then reveal their greatest truth as his
Mm.
first response. So like if you're like, where'd you park the car? As your opening line, right? He will see that person and he'll be like, okay, my character is not communicating with the other person because they're asking me where something is. The assumption of this relationship is that I am withholding something from this person. So I have a status that this person, like this like my initiation has lower status. And
Mhm.
he'll chew through all of that, and his response to something as innocuous as where did you park the car will be, I want a divorce. And you like, and it's so clear that that is not a non sequitur, but is
Yeah.
like if Beck is taking the threads of a concept and retying them, uh Miles is pulling the threads of relationship and retying them. And that's, I think, the difference between the two styles of play.
Yeah, and incredible that you're able to code switch between the two and be so facile in your own improv that you can play in a way that supports and elevates and each style.
I
Um,
mean, they're geniuses. You like
so are
they're
you. Yeah.
I think it's really easy to play with a genius. Like like they're both all you have to do is keep like it's like you keep tossing the volleyball to them and they keep spiking it and all you have to do is keep tossing the volleyball to them. So like all you have to be is like a really versatile receiver, but the two
Yeah.
of them are powerhouses.
What do you think your own identity is as an improviser?
What does that mean? What do you mean?
Like you just described both of them very succinctly. Like Beck is clever and takes the this and ties it. Miles is very relationship based and assumes truths that are deeper than what the line conveys. Do you have either a way of playing that you see, or just your voice as a comedian? You've touched on the darkness and the finding the absurdity in life, but in improv, how do you fit in?
I don't like the world, and I
Uh-huh.
see improv as an opportunity to get out of it for a half hour. So my identity as an improviser is a time traveler or a concept traveler. Like it's just like for a half hour, I'm not in reality. I am in this like incredibly immersive VR experience where I just like I can be anywhere in time or concepts. And that's I'm not improvising to do something. I'm improvising to get away from its escapism.
Yeah.
Like, I get to be in ancient Rome. I get to be a commander like on a battlefield. I get to be in a loveless marriage. I get to be anywhere else but in this horrifying moment. And that
Yeah.
is why I love and I think my identity as an improviser is like tourist. Like I'm just like, thank fucking God I get to go somewhere else.
Yeah, you're on the holodeck.
Yeah.
Do you, as you get more and more experienced, and as you age and mature in life, do you feel your scene work changing, developing? Are you finding new ways to play? Are you finding things that, like new doors that you're unlocking?
No. Is
That's
that
okay. You
like
don't.
is
Yeah.
uh no, I don't feel that at all. I feel like, there's a I don't wanna say that I've hit my limit because that seems limiting, but I don't know what else I've been improvising for so long that I don't know what else there could be to do. Like,
Yeah.
not that I'm playing the same scenes again, but, like, there've been so many theaters and so many shows and styles and, like, audiences that it feels like an entire sphere. It doesn't feel two-dimensional. It feels like, "Oh, I can go anywhere in this sphere," and if anything, and I don't mean this, to say this on an improv podcast is not to be damning to the medium. If anything, I'm starting to feel like I don't know why I'm improvising anymore.
Sure.
Other than that I get to go away for a half hour, but like I'm having trouble here post COVID, post traumas to know why I'm doing it because like so much of my personal life has been like the compass has changed so much for me in the last 6 years, 5 years, 5 years. That it's sometimes I'll be on stage and I'll be like, "What is this?" Does
Sure.
that make sense?
Yeah. You're splitting your awareness in an existential way where
Yeah.
you're still in the life that you have built and have loved all these years, and now
Yeah.
there's also an observer part of you that's like, well, does this still do that for me, or if
Yeah, yeah.
not, is there something else that it can do for me?
Yeah.
uh,
I find myself saying no to shows a lot more.
mm,
Um, because I'm like, what's gonna happen in that show? Like, yeah, there's gonna be this impermanent, transcendent moment. Like, yeah, there's gonna be that between the stage and the audience, and everybody's gonna get to experience something once and only once forever. But ultimately, like those are just scenes And those are
Yeah.
just characters, and it feels a little like lead a little bit sometimes now, where I'm just
What do you
like,
mean?
it feels heavy in a way that's like, how do I put this? You hear a monologue and you see the funny sentence in the monologue, and you know what your initiation is going to be. And you know that if you have a scene partner who is engaged with you and connected with you, that you kind of know how that scene's going to go. And like, there's going to be some surprises in it, but you both know what the game is. You both know what you're about to engage with. And you see all that play out before you've made the initiation. And it's kind of like, why am I doing that? Like, why? It's not providing that dopamine hit. It's not, it feels almost like you've been doing a magic trick for years and years. And here's what it feels like, Susie. It feels like year 3 of Boom, where it's like, okay, here, like, I'm qualified for this. I can do it to my maximum potential. I don't want to say that I've mastered it, but I've certainly experienced so much of it that I feel some kind of mastery over the thing. And I'm going into these shows and I'm like, now what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Does more organic improv excite you more and feel less boring because you don't see the premise and how that plays out ahead of time? You're surfing a wave of unexpected choices.
I can't speak with any authority on that because I don't know how much organic improv I've been a part of. Like, certainly at UCB, we're still being encouraged to be like, here's my, you step out with an intention.
Yeah.
You don't step out and just explore the space the way that like 1999 Improv Olympic would do in Chicago, where you just like go out and you like touch something. That's like, that's what it was.
It's such an insightful description. It's so correct, though. Well, like Hibeki Dry Spell, like you guys don't do like premise pulling, right? You do like get a word and go.
Yeah, we get a word and go, but it's also like very infrequently do Beck or I ever initiate a scene with absolutely nothing. Like, there's
Right.
always some choice being made as your
Right.
initiation. And that choice is like, oh yeah, okay, she's young, she's old, she's upset, she's happy. Like, there's always something. It's not just like, hey, and
Sure.
maybe also you can't shake that Boom mentality where it's like, I am still performing for people who've paid now a significant amount of money to see
Right.
an improv show. And I don't want to just be masturbatory on stage. I want to fulfill that social contract.
Yeah.
And that's
And I
just
don't.
starting to feel weird.
Yeah. And I don't mean to try and like talk you out of your point of view. I think I was like digging in there because like on behalf of the world, I don't want your improv to get so boring to you that you stop doing it because you're an important improviser.
Okay, it's not boring. I'm not bored on stage. Like, I'm not like, oh, this sucks. But I am, it's starting to make no sense to me. I don't know how to,
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it. It's just like, so I play Fortnite all the time, right? I play the video game Fortnite. And every time you play, it's slightly different. It's a battle royale game. It's different people are playing with you. You're on a different team. It's totally different, but it is always within the realm of Fortnite. Like, it's never going to not be Fortnite. And and after a while, you're like, what is this that I'm addicted to? What is this thing that I'm engaging with? And improv feels a little bit like Fortnite, where I'm like dropping into to an island, and it's going to be totally different every time, but ultimately kind of the same because it's a show. I feel like I'm having a crisis right here on your podcast.
I love it. Make the popcorn. It occurs to me that your identity as an artist, but also a human being, is that Fraggle Rock Uncle Traveling Matt, like the sentient observer among a world of unaware people, and the one who's raising your hand going, is this isn't normal, right? Both in what you observe in society, like you were talking about writing your midnight show sketches that way, but now it's like you've been in an automatic loop of your escape from that reality for so long that the escape has become your new reality. And now the voice in you that yearns to step outside and go, what is this? Is this normal? Is now doing that about your escape because the escape has become your default reality.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Uh and also part of me is wondering, improv has had like these changes. Like in the 70s, it's like long form is introduced. And people are like, what if you told these stories over the course of a half hour and they kind of wove in together? Like that two-prov with Nichols and May, like all of this stuff, like there are these big sort of orchestral movements in the evolution of improv. And maybe I'm feeling, and I have no, like, I'm not going to be the one to fix this, but I'm starting to feel a lethargy in the form,
Mm.
that it's like, okay, so character is a way to play, position is a way to play, um game is a way to play, like you can play organically, like all of these things are sort of codified and established. And I'm waiting for some young, because it's going to be some young person to be like, what if you did improv this way, and it to be new and transformational. Because it feels like everybody learns the same rules, and then we go out on stage and we do the same things depending on the theater that you're at. And that there's like something that is at some point going to shift, because there has to be more to it than what we've discovered, because we're all ignorant of what comes next.
Yeah, we've finished the end of a cycle, and
Yeah.
the new thing has not presented yet, and you are in that chasm, wanting to leave Boom, but not yet arrived in
Yeah.
LA, the new frontier. Yeah,
And also, like, if you think about like UCB and the sort of height of UCB energy is somewhere around 2009 to 2013, right? Like the time when like everybody is rabid for UCB and they open up a new space that's just like hubristic and insane. Like it's just like that's like it's like the third album of a very successful band is always the most drug fueled, like the most extravagant with the longest songs. And it felt like, okay, that's the crest, that's the pinnacle of this particular movement of improv. And now we are back to one theater that is owned by a company, I think.
yeah,
And it's like it's you feel that ebb uh to that tide, and something else is going to come in.
yeah. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, me too.
Do you have time for a few quick rapid fire questions?
Hell yeah, let's go.
All right. What are your favorite types of characters to play?
Distressed. I like playing somebody who is extremely distressed.
Great. You mentioned like jumping around times and spaces and contexts in your improv.
Mhm,
Do you have a favorite like
mhm.
time period or context to land in a tag?
Fantasy or sci-fi are my favorite places to go. Uh, like either of those is the place that I want to be the most.
Yeah. You watch a lot of sci-fi and you play a lot of video games. Are you
Yeah.
drawing specifics from those, or are you always twisting it and doing something that's like a look-alike, sound-alike?
I think it's just tropes and genre information that I'm bringing to the stage, because I don't, whether it's Boom or just like the things that I like, I'm a little worried that the audience isn't going to, like, if I'm going to reference something or parody it, I want, like, I'm not sure that the audience in Amsterdam has seen Seinfeld. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like in the same way, it's like I don't want to pull like a specific reference from this fantasy novel that I've read. I want to sort of take instead the sort of genre information and put it in a more recognizable context, because also the audience, like the fucking dudes who come up from UCLA, they haven't read Brandon Sanderson. So I'm not going to like I'm not going to be like, hey, you know this thing from The Way of Kings? Like, what if it was different? Like,
Right.
they're going to be like, fuck you.
Do you have a favorite type of object work? You're so good at physical improv.
Deaths. My favorite type of object work is either like, stabbing or being stabbed, or like, like the physicality of like trying to hold in your guts while finishing a scene, or like that you've been hit by an arrow and the entire time you're like you're referencing the arrow, like any kind of like, again, because my favorite type of character is distressed and I love to do fantasy or sci-fi, I often find myself in a scene where some horrific and slightly absurd injury has taken place, either to myself or my co-scene partner. But yeah, that's my favorite. My favorite is like, assembling a weapon like Ripley and Aliens, like just like all of that engagement.
I love it. All right, I hand you a magic wand and you can do a pop-up improv show in any location or any context that you want. What's what tickles you? Where do you want that show to be?
I want the show to be the show taking place on stage right before Abraham Lincoln is shot. So like the thing that he's right before he gets shot, somebody on stage is like, Mom, I don't want to go to college. And the other person is like, well, sweetie, we've talked about this. And then like,
my God.
and then like after Booth jumps on stage and screams "Sic Semper Tyrannis" and leaves, you have to incorporate that into the scene that you
Like you shut a window, like, wow, the neighbors are loud today. And then in the biopic, you realize that Lincoln's suggestion was taken, but John Wilkes Booth was trying to shout a suggestion, but it was not taken.
Holy shit, that's great.
Oh man, write that sketch. And what do you count as your biggest comedic influences? And these can be comedy things or life things.
Woof. Biggest comedic influences. Jesus.
Or let's take the EST off of that. Like what are some influences?
Okay, let's see. The State, early SNL, like early when, I think a lot of people talk about like the era that they grew up in as like the early times. But I think if you go back and you watch like 70s SNL, you're kind of
Shark and
you're shocked at like how crazy it was.
right.
And is it Michael O'Donoghue? Like that era where he's spray painting "dangerous" on the wall of the writer's room, and like they're trying to like, truly be, it's the trailer for that new SNL movie came out.
Yeah.
And you're talking about being the counterculture show and like, what if we don't succeed at being the counterculture show? And now it's just culture. Like it's just, it's not counterculture, it's culture.
Right.
So I don't know. I deify that era when they were like trying to respond to stuff instead of just like trying to reenact it.
Yeah.
Let's see, Monty Python, the Peter Serafinowicz show is,
I don't know
fuck, it's so brilliant, dude. You would love it.
What is it?
So Peter Serafinowicz is a comedian from the UK, and he had a sketch show He did two, I would call them two sketch shows. One he did was called Look Around You, and it was
Oh,
a
oh, I loved that show. Yeah, I didn't
yes.
know
Well,
that's him. Okay, yeah. Look
yeah, so
around
he's
you.
like he's the host of Look Around You. But then
Okay.
he had his own sketch show called The Peter Serafinowicz Show. And it's it's so fucking crazy. It's so good. It is so
Mhm.
good. And it is a great showcase of both his skills as an impressionist, but also his sensibility. Like one of my favorite sketches from that show is that it's like a I don't know what the genre is. Those talk shows where it's like, did you know that your wife was sleeping with somebody else? And the audience is like, oh, like
Yeah,
Jerry
like
Springer almost.
Yeah, Jerry
Yeah.
Springer, Maury Povich. Yeah.
But he plays an android who doesn't understand people as the host. So like like of equal importance to him is, did you know she was having an affair? And questions like, you know, how is it to have a baby in your body? Like it's like, and almost inevitably, I think he does it a couple of times. Inevitably, the robot goes berserk at the end and starts vomiting milk like the robot in Alien and like trying to kill somebody who's on stage.
Oh
Um,
God.
he's great. Mitchell and Webb look is great.
I love
Um,
them.
I love Jackass, like actual
Yeah.
90s Jackass was so
Yes.
fucking funny. Um, I don't know. That feels like enough
Yeah.
of a spec. Andy Kaufman, um,
Mhm.
uh, Tex Avery cartoons, which is
Yeah.
the guy who did the best Tom and Jerry stuff. Yeah,
A
like
lot of
all of that.
violence in your
Yeah, yeah,
portfolio.
yeah,
A lot of androids.
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I've taken way too much of your time, but
Well, I'm good. I'm good.
okay, yeah. Is there any advice that you have for improvisers who are currently studying and learning, or who are kind of just starting out on their show journey?
I used to say a thing in my, because I taught improv for a very short time. And I used to say a thing to my students that I think is the most important thing to remember. Which maybe it's a little stoic, but it's heartfelt, which is that you are dying, like literally physically you're dying. And every single day that you're alive could be the last day that you're alive. You could get hit by a car. We had an earthquake yesterday. Like anything could happen. Um, you could get cancer. And that when you are in the last moments of your life, the last thing you are going to be worried about is whether or not you looked stupid for making a brave choice in an improv scene.
Mhm.
So why not, like, if today could be your last day, why wouldn't you make the bravest, like why wouldn't you leap as far as you could in a scene? And if your partner doesn't catch you or the audience can't follow, it doesn't matter because you're
Mm.
gonna be dead. And it, like, there's no point in holding back when all of the things you've ever done in an improv scene are going to be lost, and then you're going to be a corpse, and then eventually the sun is going to burn the earth. Like why would you hold back? We're so tiny, and these choices are so small in the scheme of things that, like, that you can initiate a scene with anything especially if you zoom out as far as you can from your personal shameful nervous reality.
That's incredible. That really is it. And that's something I'm still trying to learn in my own improv. It's like, stop trying to do it right and just go, go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
My last question is, given what you've gone through in the last few years and how your perspective is now like, well, why are we doing this? And is there, what's, what else is there? What
Yeah.
else is there aside from improv and comedy? Like, is there a new frontier in your life or something you're curious about or something you want to do or try?
Not really. I'm really happy.
Good.
Other than the sort of like the feeling that I've been skiing the same slope for a long time. And I'm like, oh, it's fun to go down the slope, and each time is a little different. Uh, I'm other than that sort of existential crisis, the rest of my life, I'm so grateful for, and I'm so happy with that. All I want right now is to keep doing it. Like, it's fucking great. I love my job so much, and improv has been such a boon to that specific job, which is an enormous conceptual sandbox where you can literally initiate anything. And the world has already, like, the pre-existing world of Rick and Morty has allowed for that initiation to take place. Like an episode that I pitched for season 7, where I was like in the room saying the show can be anything. We can do an episode where they are eating spaghetti, and it turns out the spaghetti is from inside of people who've committed suicide, and then we can deconstruct that, and and the show will allow it. You can't pitch that on Friends. You can't
Right.
pitch that on This Is Us or Mom. Like, there's no like, there's very few places where you get to actually do semi-improvised initiations, and the show can absorb it and then turn out something, hopefully, that at least is aiming at profundity, if not hitting the target, but at least you're allowed to try.
Yeah. Man, I love
I fucking
that.
love my job. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so happy for you, and I'm so proud of you. Saying you're proud of someone almost, it sounds like you're trying to like connote status. Like, oh, I'm proud of you. I feel like I don't. But I am so happy for you, and glad that you're like in the center of your bullseye, your creative bullseye right now. Yeah, I can't wait to see what else comes out of that.
Thank you. I hope I had a lot of anxiety coming on this show, because I was like, my relationship with improv is so fraught right now. I was worried that I'd be a downer. So hopefully people don't listen to this when they're like, why am I doing improv? I don't know anymore. Like, improv is great. Keep doing it, listeners.
The quote that I pull to put on Instagram is just, what is the point? Do you know what I mean? Why are we doing this, Heather Campbell? No, you're so fantastic, and you are such an influence on other people. I hope you realize like what a North Star you've been for a lot of other people chasing down what they want to do in comedy, and showing them what's possible. You are the emperor of brave choices and big swings, and yeah, we're all better for it.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Thank you so much. That's what a way to start my day.
You are also the most requested guest that I've had. People keep DMing me being like, when are you going to have Heather Campbell? And I keep going, her dog had to go to the vet and we had to cancel. So yeah, this will be a much loved episode. Thanks for spending so much time. And I can't wait to see more Rick and Morty.
Thank you. And peace and take care.
If you have a question about improv that you would like me to ask a future guest, email it to yesalsopod@gmail.com and I will get it on the show. If you're a fan of the show, follow us on Instagram @yesalsopod. And please help us out by liking, rating, reviewing, clicking, sending, talking, and blasting us to your improv communities. That will help us out a lot. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Susie. That's not how podcasts work. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.